I'm trying 30 different viral cozy coloring trends, from the cute to the chaotic and everything in between. I'll be sharing my favorite effects, my biggest challenges, and the best styles to build your skills. To start, I've chosen some coloring trends that don't necessarily feel like coloring. This neon effect has been trending for a while and it is a lot of fun. I'm using a color palette from the Neon collection in my color cube, but you can do this with any bright colors. Jump straight in with your paint pens and just follow the outlines like they're made out of neon tube lights. After the main colors, I'm using a smaller white paint pen and going over each line again. This is the core of what creates the neon tube effect, but I wanted to take this one extra step with colored pencils. With similar color and very light pressure, I'm just adding a bit more of a glow around each color, and I think this really completes the look. Overall, this was a really easy effect to create. It was a lot of fun and a great starting point. It doesn't need many supplies, and I really like how it turned out. Which brings me to my next effect, the Notepad sketch. This is another trend that focuses on the line art instead of the actual coloring page, and it's one that you could do in any kind of coloring book, not just the cozy coloring books. I've seen a few different versions of this, and I love the overall sketchy look and the different embellishments that other people are adding, like stickers and notes and even damage to the page. I really like the yellow legal pad look, like this example from Anna Rose Coloring. So I've used a sharp blue pencil to create my background lines and even added some grunge and shadows around the edge of the whole page because nobody's notepad is this clean. And because this is supposed to look like a rough sketch, I grabbed a simple ballpoint pen for this and basically just drew all over the art. I think it's another good option for beginners, but it also leaves a lot of room to make it your own and really get creative with it. Creating art from the lines instead of technically coloring in opens up so many more ways to make art. And there are a lot of other trends that work from this same idea, like the blueprint effect, the glitch effect, and even whatever this chaos is. For the blueprint effect, you don't need to add back every line. Instead, choose some main objects or just focus on the characters and then have fun adding measurements and fun little annotations around the whole page. I believe Sassy Feisty Coloring was the original person to create this effect, but I love how so many people have now made it their own. I did my main lines with an acrylic paint pen, but I actually used my white Jelly Roll gel pen for all of the finer details and all of the lines in the background. I found this overall to be a little more challenging because I wanted my annotations to be perfect, and I fell into a pattern of overthinking this in a big way. But I do love the final effect, and it didn't need many supplies. The glitch page was a little trickier. I've seen a lot of people try this, and this style has actually been around before it became a cozy coloring trend. It's much easier to create a look like this when you find the original approach and better understand what it's trying to achieve. In this case, the blue and red are a specific choice to look like the black lines have separated. So separating the black lines, the red lines all end up on one side and the blue on the other. I think the choice of blue and red specifically is actually inspired by the look of 3D stereograms when you're not wearing the red and blue 3D glasses. So if you do want to make this style your own, you could instead split the colors into cyan, magenta, and yellow, like a printing press, or into red, blue, and green, like a monitor. From there, the extra lines are intended to be another glitch effect, where chunks of the pixels have moved into the wrong place. I think there's a lot of room for people to keep experimenting with this trend. It was fairly quick, although how easy it is kind of depends on how you approach it and how much detail you choose to add. I do think it's worth a try at least once. The thing about all these trends is that they are really just fun prompts to help you get through creative block and maybe do something different. Some are just about trying a cool effect, but others will actually help you to develop new skills without even realizing. Like this next viral coloring trend, the gradient coloring page. This is a trend you can try over and over and get completely different looks just by changing the colors you use. At a basic level, this is just about choosing a gradient of colors and coloring each object with some or all of those colors following the same order. And you can do this with any set of colors and without knowing anything else about lighting or shading, and it will still look cool. But it's also a wonderful way to experiment with colors and lighting and develop your blending skills. So here are a few tips. First, try to choose colors that are similar to each other to make the blend easier. If you've got a color cube, I recommend looking at the different sky and sunset palettes for colors that naturally blend together. Oh, I like this one. Second, practice your blending. Alcohol markers are amazing at blending, but not all brands are equal, and the cheaper paper of a lot of coloring books will make this harder. I have another video where I explore the different approaches to layering and blending alcohol markers, but the main thing to keep in mind is to give the alcohol markers time to blend on their own. As long as both colors are still slightly wet, they should keep blending into each other. Scrubbing or extra pressure won't help, as tempting as it is. I use a hoo-hoo for a lot of my coloring, but when it comes to blending, I much prefer my Olo markers. They don't let out the ink as quickly, and the nib is more flexible, so they are perfect for this kind of page. And my final tip, think about your values. By that, I mean paying attention to how light or how dark the colors are, and this will help your page to look more dynamic by the end. If you can find a gradient that goes from a lighter color to a darker color, then your page, instead of just being fun gradients, will actually have some really advanced lighting effects. We'll come back to advanced lighting soon. I do think this came out really well, and it's something that will look totally different for everyone. I think it's a great challenge to build your skills and really practice your blending without worrying about making it perfect. In fact, this next page is similar to the gradient concept, except that it's monochrome. It's all different versions of one color. I've done a few different vintage style projects where I've used distressed inks or even tea bags to create a grungy paper look. But this time, I want to do this entirely with alcohol markers. So I'm using this sepia color palette from Be Newest Coloring, and I found a coloring page that reminds me of those old-timey photos at the tourist spots that I may or may not have done as a child. I'm using her light to dark colors to create a vignette edge, and then I'll come back and color in the rest. I maybe went a little overkill on the vignette blending. Using the same light to dark colors, I'm first choosing a lightness for everything on the page and just coloring it all in. Then I'm going back with the darker markers to add more and more shadows wherever they feel right. It all still feels a bit neat, so I'm going to be a bit rougher with my markers around the edges, maybe add some spots around the page, and just try to add a bit of general roughness. I probably overcomplicated this page. I definitely spent more time on it than I planned, but I do like how it turned out, and these colors worked beautifully. While I'm in a monochrome mood, there are two other coloring trends that I want to try. First, I found this gorgeous pink vintage style page from Color with Steph on TikTok, and I just had to try this for myself. And then there's this rainbow highlight page from Doodly Bugs, which came from a concept started by Chi on TikTok. I love both of these, and this concept of the grayscale with some kind of colored highlight can be done in so many other ways. You don't have to be an expert at lighting and shadows to pull off these effects, but it does help to have a basic idea of how they work. By varying how much dark and light your image has, it gives way more dimension overall and makes these other effects look even more interesting. Creating lighting effects on your pages is less about the light and more about the shadows, the areas that the light doesn't reach. The easiest way to start is to choose a single light source. Even put a marker on your page. Then imagine lines from your light source to your objects. The back of your objects won't get any light, so we can call this the dark side. And this will also create what's called a cast shadow. This is a shadow that the object makes by blocking the light from whatever is under or behind it. Cast shadows can be soft or hard, depending on whether you're wanting a harsh sunlight or a more diffused, gentle light. And this is just one way to change the look of a whole scene. It can be really helpful to look at different photos and different reference images to see how different types of light interact with objects and try to copy them. Try moving your light source or considering multiple light sources and see if you can spot some of the other ways that the light is impacting the colors in those images. I usually start with the most obvious areas first, blocking out obvious cast shadows or those back shadows. Then I keep looking at my image at the other areas that just still feel flat, and I think about what shadows might help. For example, you also have occlusion shadows, where objects are really close to each other or create gaps that the light probably won't reach no matter which direction it's facing. Or reflected light from the other surfaces even in those shadow areas. If you're unsure, just keep it simple and have a go. For example, I don't always add cast shadows, but I do like to add a subtle gradient that goes darker as it gets further away from whatever light source I've picked, just to create that slight sense of depth. This is very oversimplified, but it's also just a starting point. By the time you've created your beautiful rainbow edges or the highlights on your cute coloring page, nobody's going to be judging the accuracy of your shadows. But if you do want to learn more, I have a video from a few years ago now where I go really in depth about the different types of shadows and how to use them in your coloring. I'll include that link below. My next page is kind of two challenges in one. I'm using just two markers and I'm trying to create a lo-fi look. The lo-fi aesthetic is all about muted colors, high contrast, and dreamy scenes. But the challenge of just two markers is what makes this interesting. If I can match up the right two colors, I can introduce a third color. But that also means that I can't exactly use one really light color and one really dark color because the light color will just disappear in the mix. But not having a clear light and dark will make the shading a little trickier. So I'm trying to find two colors that fit this lo-fi vibe, but also match each other well enough to produce a strong third color. And I think I've found the colors I want to use. I've decided to use the pink as more of my highlights color and the blue as more of the general color, and then the mix of both to create shadows in the purple. I am resisting the urge to blend or create gradients here, partly because it's not quite the style I'm going for, but also because I don't think these strong different colors will let me. Meanwhile, the cheaper paper is not nearly as nice as the Ohuhu marker pad that I was just using, so the colors are bleeding outside the lines and are much darker than I intended. But with all that aside, I'm just coloring one thing at a time, starting with the obvious, changing my mind as I go, and eventually finding my direction. I'm using the white pen at the end to bring back some of the contrast, and while this isn't maybe what I was expecting, I do think this turned out pretty well. It was an interesting challenge, and I'd probably try it again, maybe with a bit more planning ahead next time for my lighting and shading. If shadows are overwhelming, even the biggest, messiest coloring page looks good if you add some acrylic pen highlights. So this is chaos coloring. A lot of mess, a lot of fun, and a headache for the perfectionist. But it all comes together when you add some white highlights. White highlights have always been one of my not-so-secret weapons. I used white highlights long before I even owned a full set of markers, and one of the first videos on this channel was a white pen comparison, which I later redid as my first ever giant product comparison, comparing over 60 white gel pens, ink pens, and paint pens. And since then, I've tested pencils, markers, and I've gone full circle back to the paint pens. Since my more recent paint marker comparison only a few months ago, I have been sent even more paint pens to try, and I found myself really enjoying the Meaden double-ended paint pens. And I finally got my hands on a white Copic, so I'm adding these to my favorites. Arts playtesting is my happy place. But when it comes to my art, my favorite part is adding all those final sparkles and effects with the white. You can even use a white paint pen to cover areas of your page to completely change the look. We'll come back to that in a moment. First, let's revisit this chaos coloring. Well, it's definitely chaos coloring. This was super quick to do, and even if you don't like the end result, it's actually just a really fun way to loosen up and free yourself to experiment. Take the pressure off, because coloring shouldn't be stressful, but some of these other trends can really trigger perfectionism. Other than all of these trends, I've actually been coloring quite differently this year, and I've been exploring ways to help loosen up, push aside my perfectionism, and find ways to just make coloring fun again. Getting messy is a great first step, but I've wanted to find a way to create not just another trend, but a new approach or method to coloring. I've been filling my feed lately with artists who create bright, dopamine-inspired art, and with dopamine decor that's popping up all over Pinterest, and with trying to find my own way back to fearless creativity and to being curious again, I have created the dopamine coloring method. The goal here is to start with a mess, play with color, and find your own way to joyful art. I like to start with a limited color palette, but make it bright. Choose pastels, neons, and dopamine colors, and if you have a favorite color, add that too. Starting with a coloring page and a limited color palette act as boundaries so that you can take bigger creative risks in other areas. I always like to start with pastel alcohol markers and use the chisel brush. The chisel reminds me to start messy because you don't have to color outside the lines, but I do highly recommend it because this is what takes the pressure off for the rest of the page. It probably will look bad at first, but just embrace it. If the project is quick and it looks bad, then there is far more permission to experiment. Then start using your stronger colors to play and just have fun. Keep it abstract or start adding shading. Keep it messy or start coloring in the lines. This part is up to you. You just do what feels good and trust your instincts. Use other supplies, try some stencils, and just explore your creative curiosity. No matter how it looks by the end of this stage, do not worry, because the next stage with the paint pens will bring this all together. White is wonderful for highlights, but I also love just using other contrasting colors at this point just to keep experimenting. If it doesn't look good, it just means you probably haven't added enough paint pens yet. Add dots, add scribbles, add outlines, and watch your messy experiment transform into a piece of art. And this is dopamine coloring. I've already seen some wonderful examples from other people on Instagram and in person, so please tag me if you try this for yourself, and I'd love to see it. I've done a lot of pages now, and I'm finding that each new page is giving me new techniques and styles that I'm starting to use on the other pages too. But there are a lot more that I still want to try. I've been saving some of the more ambitious pages until last because I'm feeling a little more nervous about them, especially some of these jelly effects that I really want to try, and the iridescent page, and this crazy embroidery effect. So first, I'd like to play around with something simpler. I've seen a lot of people creating this sticker effect, and I did something similar a few years ago with colored pencils, but I didn't have to cover up any other lines to make it work. Here, artists are using their white paint pens to outline the areas they want to be stickers, and then using alcohol markers to create the shadows like I did with the pencils. Once you've created your sticker, you can choose to color the rest of the page however you want. I don't love how mine has turned out, but this was pretty easy, and I'm sure I'll try it again. The next few techniques I want to try all work from this same idea of using a white pen, some paper, or even washi tape to cover up existing lines, then redrawing new lines. So I'd like to try the Polaroids. Film strip. The washi lines are cool. I might skip some of these others because they're all very similar. These all use the same idea of creating some kind of mask and then using two distinct different styles to separate what's in the mask from what's outside the mask. So with my Polaroid photos here, I decided to do a fun rainbow abstract party background and then just a single color with some shading for each photo. This one was super easy and fun to do, especially if you're using a picture with cute characters. This book was given to me, and can I just say, this paper works so well with the Olo markers. It is really easy to blend. It's like 400 GSM, and it doesn't even go through to the back. For my film strip, I decided to leave most of the page uncolored and just used a few grays for most of the reel itself, and I used a similar technique to my earlier neon page to create the lightsaber. Again, this was a really easy and fun page. For the washi tape, I'm just using this to separate different areas of my page. I've been waiting for an excuse to try these Winsor & Newton neon markers they sent me, so I'm turning this into a neon page. Maybe just like a fun graffiti style neon page for something quick and bright. Once you've got the basic idea of masking worked out, you can get even more creative. I've seen people creating coffee stains and color splashes and using that as a mask. And actually I did something like this a while ago with actual coffee and just a few pencils. This time I kind of want to take a less messy approach. So I'm drawing a color splash that was originally going to be paint, but once I picked my page, this felt far more appropriate being water. For flounder, I did my favorite coloring method of just using alcohol marker for the base layer and some colored pencils for light shading and the details on top. And again, I used my favorite white paint pen to add some fun highlights and outline my water splash. I'm not totally happy with my decision to just make the background dark, and I might come back and work on this again at a later time, but I still love the overall effect, and I always love an excuse to add lots of white highlights. All of these masking effects are great for beginners, but you can take them so much further. They are perfect to break up a page that you can then color with other styles or try other trends. I've just kept these all simple with going color versus grayscale, but you can create any combination of styles. Because you have to be crazy to try a whole page with something like glitter! The one art supply that I've basically banned from my house, but drawing it sounds much less messy. This was definitely a technique that I wanted to practice first, and after a few weird results, I found a simple tutorial from Elizabeth Home Colors and decided to switch to a marker that had a fine tip instead of my usual go-to brush tip. And from here, it's time to get dotting. I'm really liking how this looks. This glitter effect really works when you just keep adding more and more dots in all different sizes, in different light and dark values, and a lot of white to finish it off. But there are a lot of cats. That first cat took 20 minutes, and there are 15 more cats. So I'm thinking about maybe only doing the cats in the middle, like there are a pile of magic cats among a bigger pile of sleeping cats in the background. I don't know, but I'm just gonna do it. This is another book with beautiful thick paper, and I really like how the thicker paper feels, even though it is probably soaking up a lot more ink. But these cats are so cute, and now they're sparkly too. I want to try more shiny things. I'm not sure that I'm ready for the iridescent look. I'm excited to try the cosmic jelly later, but I've also found a few people trying to create foil balloons. Ooh, I have some ideas actually. I think I'm gonna skip the tutorials and instead find myself some shiny reference photos and see if I can create this my own way. I drew some foil balloons way back when my channel reached 50,000 subscribers, and I spent a lot of time on that page. It wasn't easy, and I remember regretting it many times halfway in, but I have always been fascinated by how light bends around objects like this, and I want to try it again. This time, hopefully finding a shortcut or a way to create this look with markers that other people can then copy. But I tried this on a bad day. I way overcomplicated it. I had a few moments of feeling like I found my flow, and then I just felt overwhelmed again. The first one actually turned out okay, but the second, I couldn't even find the right pig, and I just felt defeated. I'm abandoning this one. Today is not a day for shiny things. I had a similar struggle with my all gold page. Instead of treating it like a simple gradient, I got so focused on trying to make accurate reflections and realistic texture, and so I overcomplicated it. And although it turned out okay in the end, it wasn't fun, and I could have achieved a similar gold effect with much less stress. There are a few other shiny techniques that I really want to try, but I think I need to step back and find something simpler for my next cozy coloring trend. I think I've colored more pages in the past 2 weeks than I've colored in the past year. The next few techniques are all very similar, breaking up the page into different shapes or even a perfect grid, and then changing each piece into glass, mosaic tiles, pixels, or just about anything. Stained glass, bathroom tiles, pixels, kind of. These were a lot of fun and fairly easy. When I tried pixel art years ago, I made it much more complicated than this and tried to make sure every square only contained one color like true pixel art. This is a much simpler version, but it still looks great, and it might actually be one of my favorite pages so far. I like the final look of the tiles a little bit less, but that's mainly because I made the grid much bigger and the original page doesn't really excite me. The bunnies are just cuter. I feel like you could use this same process to create a fake cross stitch or Lego or even a diamond painting. But I also want to move on to some different things, and I'm feeling a little more confident now to take on one of the pages that I am the most excited about, but also kind of scared about. It's time for jelly, gummy, jelly, jello, whatever you call this. It's fun and it's squishy and I'm ready to try it. I found this wonderful tutorial that's really easy to follow, and once I started, this wasn't as hard as I expected. I think when I've tried to color objects with different density and the light reflections like this in the past, I've tried to think too realistically and have overcomplicated the process, when actually, this doesn't need to reflect light perfectly or be photorealistic to create a really effective gummy look. I don't think I'm gonna color this whole page. I'm really happy with these characters, and I wanna save the extra effort for an even more ambitious jelly look on my next page. This was a great tutorial, and the final look is really cool. I'm definitely going to make use of this style again in the future. For the next page, I want to level up to cosmic jelly. I'm taking inspiration from this wonderful rainbow jelly page by Coloring Girl on TikTok, and I'm going big. Time to pull out this huge lay flat coloring book and grab my Olo markers for some really good blending again. I'm trying to find a good combination of rainbow colors, so this feels like a good time to visit some of the other rainbow trends that I've seen online. There are so many ways to use rainbows in your coloring pages, but I really wanted to try this very specific rainbow style by Kaylee Rainbow. rainbow. I've found the rainbow colors that she recommended, although I'm not sure if they're her most recent. And for the most part, this is similar to the gradient trend that we've already tried. I like how some of the areas of her page are just solid colors, so I'm gonna do the same. But it's the next step that makes this unique. With a darker version of each color, I'm adding dots in every area in all different sizes, and then I'm finishing with a white, adding more dots and using a white pencil to create a soft glow around some of the new white areas. It's simple, but very effective. This next trend is one of the first that I found, and I have almost left it to last because I'm a little bit intimidated by it. But my jelly and my rainbows are giving me the confidence. So let's go. After looking at how most people are approaching this, I think the key is choosing the right combination of colors that's basically a pastel rainbow and coloring it with part of a jelly look, part of the rainbow look, and lots of highlights. This definitely feels like one of those trust the process pages more than most. It doesn't look anything like iridescent or pearlescent or even shiny at this point, but the last few steps should make this all work. I hope. Instead of just outlining with white, I've noticed most people are outlining first with a colored paint pen, then going over it with a white, almost like the neon page that we did earlier. So if this one feels like it's 10 steps beyond hard, start with a neon page, maybe a rainbow page, maybe a jelly page, and then just put them all together and you're basically almost there. I thought that doing the entire background with this effect might risk losing all the details and might not work at all, but it's fun, and actually I think it does work. It feels like our little raccoon here is lost in a rainbow balloon heaven. And you'd think that I'd be sick of drawing jelly and balloons and shiny things by now, but actually I am in my element. After getting over my initial fear of messing these up, all of these pages have been so fun, and they've become some of my favorites out of this whole challenge. Especially this one. This was a lot of fun and didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. What a cool effect. Definitely one that you need to try even if you need to do some other warm-up challenges first. Not all of my challenges went to plan, but even when they failed, they gave me a chance to experiment and find new ways around each challenge. Like the torn paper that bled right through to the area I wanted to color, or the gingerbread that kind of looked overcooked and weirdly iced, or the comic book style where I didn't really know where I was going until I'd already done the opposite. But with more time and just changing my approach as I went, I was able to pull each of these together, learn new things, and complete each trend. And with 29 different coloring styles now complete, I feel like I have learned so much. I feel a lot more confident with alcohol markers than ever before, and I don't feel so intimidated by a blank coloring page. This has been such a wonderful journey of coloring differently, being creative in new ways, and exploring colors even more. And as I get ready for my last page, I'd love to know which of these techniques you've tried or have been wanting to try, and I have put together a blog post with all the supplies that I've been using and the links to each of these books if you would like to give them a go for yourself. And with that, there is one page left. So I think this was created by Alley Cat Creative, who actually did this with pencils on top of markers. But I think I'm gonna try this version by Hannah V Color, who's done the same thing but with markers. So this actually just needs 2 colors. I've started with the base of my 2 colors, filling this area and using the chisel tip because it creates more of a line effect. Since this whole thing is gonna be covered with lines, we might as well start here. Then I'm using the bullet tip on my darker color and I'm creating the start of some cotton strands. These are all coming from one direction and I'm trying to taper them off into the middle, and then I'm going to come back with the first marker and do the same thing, and hopefully this will allow them to blend a little more. I don't know if this is the proper technique, not exactly following a tutorial here, but so far it seems to be working well. Now I want to create the lighter strokes coming from the other side, and I've decided to use my jelly roll pens for this. I've got a size 8 and a size 5, and between the two I'm doing the same thing that I just did but in the opposite direction. The basic effect is almost done at this point, and from here it's really deciding how you want to finish it off. Instead of using a thick black paint pen, I've decided to use a Sharpie S-Gel ballpoint pen to do these finer details, and from here it's just about making everything a little bit fuzzier and rougher and adding some extra details on the edges. And I thought this was going to be so much harder than it ended up being. It wasn't quick, but wow, I love this effect. 30 coloring pages, 30 different techniques, and there is still so many more to try.